Okay, folks, here we are yet again. First one of the new year. My goodness, that last year flew by. The holiday went by in a flash. But here we are with our first guest of the year. And oh my goodness, what a special guest we have. One of our all of our favorites, a man who, I've met lots of really inspirational people over my career, but my goodness, this man is so inspirational. He's changed my life. For example, since we last had a chat with him, I haven't brushed my teeth with toothpaste and I've not had a shower with shampoo. So there you go. I think you already know who we're talking about here. We've got the amazing Dr. Alvin Danenberg as our first guest of the year. He's been up to all sorts of things. It's going to be great to catch up and see what he's recommending just now. So before any further ado, Dr. Danenberg, welcome back to our little show thing, and Happy New Year to you.
Well, thank you. What an honor. I mean, here we are. You're all the way over in England. I'm all the way over here on the East Coast of the United States. Yeah. It's like you and I are sitting opposite each other at my kitchen table. Amazing. I love technology. Although technology has its ups and downs, it is amazing. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Well, it's fantastic. And, I keep in touch with you, as you know, and I see what you're up to. And your recent blogs have been quite inspiring. I also do a thing at the turn of the year for goal setting, and you did some really cool things. So I thought what we might do is hear what you're currently up to, what's currently exciting you, what your passions are, how you're getting on generally, the whole thing about what you think about COVID as ever, because it's in the zeitgeist, obviously. We're very interested, as you know, in this group on healthy health span, or lifespan rather. So we'll just chat through that kind of stuff. That should keep us quite a while, I would think.
Oh yeah, for at least a couple of days, right?
Where would you like to begin now?
Things are very exciting. Everything that I have been doing, I do coaching literally around the world, 12-week metabolic coaching. I've created this concept that is basically the essence of my unconventional cancer protocols. Because I have this incurable cancer. I'm doing well. I'm not done chemo. But basically, from everything I research, my success to this point is to create a robust immune system. Yeah. Now, I am not cured from cancer. I am not in remission. My last PET scan, that was May 8th, 2020, showed no active cells in my entire body. Wonderful, fantastic, but it's not everything, because the PET scan doesn't show all cancer cells who have abnormal dysfunctional antibodies because of my malignancy, which is a malignancy of multiple myeloma. But I feel fantastic and I do extremely well. I have issues. Come on, I have issues, but I don't think I look like a guy that's dying, but theoretically I am. But I do believe the reason is supporting my immune system, and it's not cancer or chronic disease, although it's critical for both of those elements. It's essential for all of us that want to be proactive to treat our bodies and protect the robust immune system. I don't want to get into COVID-19. I don't have a cure for COVID-19. It's a virus. Just assume that this is a virus. We have dealt with viruses in the human species forever, yeah. I'm assuming, yeah. Certainly thousands and thousands of years, and our body's immune system evolves and develops to protect us from anything and everything. Now, if you don't have a strong immune system, if it's compromised, and there's so many ways it's compromised, we can go into that. Yeah. But if you have a compromised immune system and you allow it to keep being compromised, it can't function efficiently. Let's think about a splinter in your finger. Yeah. If you have a splinter in your finger, and let's say you're the healthiest person alive, you're eating well, sleeping well, exercising well, everything you put in your body is good, and all the junk is not there. You avoid anything and everything toxic to your body. But you have a splinter in your finger. You have that splinter. It causes inflammation in the skin. That's part of the immune system. Until you remove the splinter.
Yeah.
But let's say you remove the splinter. Obviously, it starts to heal. But then for some reason, you take that splinter and stab it in your finger again once a week in the same puncture wound. It never heals.
Yeah.
You're healthy. You're doing everything right, but you're irritating your body in the same way. If that irritation is in your gut, because of diet or chemicals or dirty electromagnetic field therapy or overstressing your body emotionally or over exercising, creating oxidative stress, all kinds of things, you're throwing a splinter in the system continuously. And no matter what else you try to do, your immune system is compromised. Your immune system is the armed forces in your body. It's constantly working to protect you. And if it's constantly in a state of mobilization, it has less efficiency to become mobilized when you really need it, when a very potent, virulent virus attacks your body.
Yeah.
So the answer is you have to have a strong immune system. And that's what I've been working about with and writing about. I've even created what I would think is 5 biomarkers for the average person to check out to how robust their immune system is. How much risk do you have for chronic diseases going forward?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, one would imagine you've uncovered those 5 based on your own personal experience. You know, unlike most of us who are watching this, we've not had extreme situations to the extent that you have. So your experience is more than valid. And beyond that, you must have done quite a bit of research, one would imagine, because again,
I'm a little geeky.
Yeah,
I'm a little geeky in that respect.
Yeah, but your motivation is obvious to find out, isn't it? So
I am.
What are the 5? Are you prepared to share them with us?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So it all has to do, again, with this robust immune system and what can we do to either identify if it's good or bad and enhance it if it's not up to snuff. So number 1, and this is probably the most under-recognized situation, and that is a healthy mouth, no bleeding gum tissue. And let me tell you why this is such a serious factor.
Yeah.
There are people in the medical world, conventional medical doctors, that know about disease, but they know nothing about the mouth.
Yeah.
There are integrative physicians that know a lot about how to fix a damaged gut microbiome, but they know nothing about the mouth. And all of these people do what they do to repair the body and improve the damage from manifestations of diseases without understanding the mouth could be a significant contributor, and they're ignoring it.
Yeah.
Just like the splinter in your finger. I wrote a paper some months ago about 14 splinters in a dental mouth, in a mouth that could cause other systemic problems. The problem is it's like a splinter that you don't know. If there is an irritant in the mouth, a broken filling, poor dentistry, a host of other things that's causing irritation and inflammation, it's affecting the immune system. It's causing the gum tissue to become, in the early stages, called gingivitis. In other words, the gum tissue bleeds very easily, spontaneously, or if you rub it or probe it or clean it or do something to it. It tells you your immune system is compromised. If it's not a problem of dentistry in the mouth, it definitely is a marker of damage in the gut microbiome that affects the immune system and affects the healthy bacteria in the mouth. So if you can look at your mouth and identify if you have any bleeding, and I can tell you how to do that, That is a biomarker that your immune system is compromised. You need to see a dentist, basically a biological dentist that understands this. Some do, some don't, but they have to understand the biology and take care of it, because even, again, if you really get your body healthy, but you don't clean up what's going on in the mouth, that inflammation, that bleeding is compromising your immune system. That's literally the sign of a compromised immune system. So the way you can check it, of course, you could brush your teeth. If you see any bleeding or pink on the toothbrush, you have infection, you have gingivitis.
Yeah.
You have gingivitis. You know, the gum tissue in the mouth around the teeth is as tough and protective as the cuticle around your nail. If you brush or you clean your nails with a nail brush, you would never expect bleeding. If you did see bleeding, you'd be concerned. Why don't we become concerned when we brush or floss or clean our teeth and you see bleeding? Mainly, you know, you go to the hygienist, the dental hygienist, and they clean your teeth, and you ask them, how's my mouth? And she'll say, it's really good. You just have a little bleeding in the lower molars. A little bleeding is a sign of infection. That's not good. That may not be the end of the world, but it's not good.
No.
You got to know that.
Okay.
So there is a device that is a little cleaning device, almost looks like a toothpick. It's made with silicone, does not damage the gum tissue at all. But it's called a TP Easy Pick. It's spelled TEPE, easy. It's easily available on Amazon. Those little interdental cleaning devices, which look like or the size of a toothpick, you go between the teeth at the gum line. It helps to remove unhealthy accumulation of dental plaque. And we can talk about dental plaque later. I know we've done that in the past. But when you do that, you rub it back and forth where the gum meets the tooth, between every tooth in your mouth. If you see any bleeding anywhere, even a little pink, you have at least gingivitis.
Yeah.
And if you have that, gingivitis is just inflammation of the gum. It's not gotten deeper under the gum into the bone. That is a sign of infection, a compromised immune system. Need to do something about it. So you can test yourself very easily with these little easy TP Easy Picks. Obviously, they're great to clean between the teeth. But if you see bleeding, you have gingivitis. You have compromised immune system.
Good
That's
man.
number one.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Fantastic. I'm sure everyone's
The other thing has a great deal to do with diet and what's called metabolic flexibility.
Yeah.
We as humans have evolved to a situation all along at least 160,000 years, maybe 2.5 million years as a species. Our digestive system has not been fed breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 2 snacks every day. It's not the way we eat.
No.
And we don't eat a bunch of carbohydrates. Humans lean more a carnivore diet than a plant diet. Although we're omnivores, our digestive system is designed and needs to digest animal-based products, nose to tail. That's animal meat, fat, collagenous material, and organs. And these are not loaded with refined carbohydrates. These are not bread. These are not processed sugars. And these are not processed other elements like processed seed oils and vegetable oils, which are very, very unhealthy fats. So our body is designed to eat these foods, not continuously. We actually eat intermittently when we were primal. Sometimes we went days without eating because we couldn't find anything, or we didn't find very much. So our bodies are designed to metabolize our fat cells for energy, for fuel, for days, weeks, months, from what I understand. We are not designed to eat carbohydrates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but Western societies do. And we are very metabolically inflexible, meaning that our body just digests the carbohydrates and it doesn't really get into a state of what's called ketosis, where it is burning fat cells for fuel. our body needs to do that. We need to be in a state of ketosis. We did that naturally. As a matter of fact, throughout the animal kingdom, the animals actually are in a state of ketosis for the most part and produce ketone bodies. And those ketones do phenomenal things of repairing the body, a clean burning fuel for the heart and muscle tissue and the brain. And we need to do that. And that supports our overall immune system. So how do we know we're in ketosis? Well, you have to have a diet that is low in carbohydrates. You go in and out of that diet. You literally eat a diet that keeps you in ketosis maybe 6 or so days a week. Then you eat a bunch of carbs, healthy carbs, maybe 100 to 150 grams of carbs once a week, and then back and forth. And your body maintains ketosis, and it goes out of ketosis and it remains in ketosis. But how do you know that? Well, there are various methods to determine ketone levels.
Yeah.
One is a urine strip. It's a urine ketone strip. You can pee on the urine strip, and it'll tell you if you have ketones that are coming out of your kidneys into your urine, and it'll tell you if it's slight, moderate, or advanced. But they're not terribly accurate. And when your body gets used to using ketones in their blood system, the excess really doesn't spill into the urine so well. Yeah. There are other tests, a blood test where you can stick your finger and do a blood ketone test, which is very accurate, but then you have to keep sticking your finger. Yeah. I am a wuss. I do not like to stick my finger. And if I did stick my finger once, 3 times a week, I wouldn't want to do it anymore. But if you really want to know how your ketone levels are, you need to stick your finger every hour, 24 hours a day, maybe. I'm not going to do that. No. But there is a ketone breath meter that actually was developed in the United States, and it was put on the market just several months ago from a company called Biosense. Yeah. And it is a meter that registers the acetone levels in the deep part of your breath. So it doesn't register anything in the beginning of the breath, but in the deep part of the breath, which is apparently more clinically significant. And it's just a matter of blowing into this little meter, and it registers what your acetone level, which is a byproduct of the ketones in your blood, what your acetone level is, and it correlates very well with the blood ketone levels. Right. So I can register when I'm thinking I'm in ketosis. I can register if I am in ketosis as often as I without sticking my finger. It's painless. Yes. Painless is definitely easy for me. So I do that, and my goal is to be in ketosis, like I said, about 6 days a week. And my goal would be about, on average of a day, would be 1.5 millimoles per is it milliliter or liter? Yeah, I think it's liter. 1.5 millimoles per liter. Yeah. And that tells me I am in a state of ketosis. Now, as a cancer patient, there is some great research that suggests healthier diets for cancer patients are diets that maintain ketosis. So there's another reason I want to be in ketosis, and I try to do that. So I've noticed that when I do the breath meter, my ketone levels go up to maybe a high of 2.7 millimoles per liter, and maybe it stays as low as 0.8 millimoles per liter during the day, but the average is about 1.5 millimoles per liter. Yep. I want to be on the upper end of that, not really much beyond 3.0 millimoles per liter. Mm-hmm. So that's my goal. That is a biomarker for me to know that I am putting ketones in my body that supports my immune system. And the reason my immune system is that ketones, again, are free, very clean burning fuels, and they generate.
We just froze there.
I am sorry. It just all of a sudden disappeared. Are we together?
Yeah, we're back together. I'll kind of edit it as best I can. Yeah.
So I think I was saying that
we're talking
registering ketones is
your
an
immune.
important element to understand if you're in
Yeah.
ketosis and if your immune system is strong. The third biomarker that I look at is glycemic variability. So let me tell you what that really is. There is so much research that's published that identifies that your body's ability to produce insulin ingesting carbohydrates is very critical for metabolic health.
Yeah.
And if that produced from the pancreas and it takes the glucose, the carbohydrates break down to glucose, and it takes
Yeah.
the blood and either stimulates the cells to utilize it for fuel or takes that glucose and puts it into other cells to store as fat, it is doing its job. But if it can't do its job and the glucose is just not being utilized correctly, you can actually become metabolically inefficient and create all kinds of metabolic diseases leading towards diabetes and a host of other problems. So it is important that this glucose gets out of the blood, utilized as fuel or stored as fat or stored as glycogen in the muscle and or the liver. So one way to identify that is to look at how the glucose, after you eat a carbohydrate, how that level of glucose rises in your blood, how long it takes and how high it rises, and how long it eventually gets to become a normal level again. And that is called glycemic variability, the body's ability to take that glucose once it spikes and then put it into the body or utilize it properly. And that variation of glycemic variability in the level of glucose up and down as you eat and whatever is an indicator of potential risk for chronic disease. If you have a high glycemic variability where you eat something and that glucose really spikes high and it stays high a long time for it to get back to normal, that glycemic variability, that high level of standard deviation, the variation from the mean, indicates that you have a higher risk for chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease and a host of other chronic diseases. And that's been reported in the literature over and over again. There are many articles that talks about this glycemic variability needs to be low.
Yeah.
Well, there is a way to determine that. Now, you could also do this finger stick that I don't prefer to do, where you take a blood glucose level. And even if you did it and it didn't bother you, you'd literally keep sticking your finger, and when you go to sleep, you're not sticking your finger. So you have no idea how the glucose is moving in and out of your blood system. Actually, even when you're not eating, the glucose rises and falls. You have cortisol that's produced. It creates gluconeogenesis. You get glucose in your blood. Your body needs to regulate that. So there is a device called a continuous glucose monitor. It's a little device that you put on your you put anywhere that is inconspicuous on your body. When I did it, and I did it for 2 weeks, I put it on the bottom part of my arm, which is very easy, but you can put it on your belly or whatever, someplace that you're not going to bump it. So what it does is it literally puts a little microfiber into the interstitial tissues. That's the tissues, not into the bloodstream, but into the tissues of that part of your body. And it continues to register the level of glucose in that area of your body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it takes a registration of it 5 or 10 minutes. It's recorded in the data that is assembled on either an app that's on your phone or some kind of a device. And what it will do, it will show you how your glucose in your blood, because once the blood has glucose, it then filters into the interstitial tissues, and that's where the continuous glucose monitor is registering the glucose. It will tell you how it is fluctuating up and down. That is the glycemic variability. And the software actually computes the standard deviation of that glycemic variability over time, every day, every few days, every week, every 2 weeks. So what I believe is, if you have a device like this and you get your standard deviation of your normal glucose variability or glycemic variability, you will have a number that correlates with either a high risk or a low risk of chronic disease and cancer, as well as a correlation to how robust your immune system is. So if you have a high standard deviation, you have a high risk, a standard deviation of glycemic variability, you have a high risk of chronic disease. If you have a low standard deviation, you have low risk of chronic disease and a high indication of a robust immune system. So you want that standard deviation as low as possible. There are some numbers that have been accumulated from some papers that suggest that if your standard deviation is above 20 or so, you have a high risk of disease. If it's between 20 and 14, it might be a good goal or the average person's standard deviation. If it's below 14, it's an indication you have a very low risk for chronic disease and a very robust immune system. Interestingly, when I did that, and I did that, I think last year, and I wrote a paper about it, my standard deviation was 10. To me, is phenomenal. So I am thinking, now I've just mentioned 3 biomarkers. I have no bleeding gums tissue whatsoever. I maintain ketosis basically 6 days a week, cycle out of it, but 1 day a week, but I maintain ketosis. I have a low standard of glycemic variability. Those 3 biomarkers are now in my favor. So the 4th biomarker that I have put together, and I'm just looking at research. I'm not doing the research. I'm just reading a lot of research. So the 4th biomarker that I think is unique, and it has nothing to do with diet, but literally has everything, that is the health of my gut microbiome. The research that has been done that I have read, especially with peoples like the Hadza in Tanzania and some other primal societies where researchers have literally evaluated their poop and determined the bacteria and the variety of bacteria in their guts. They have determined that a healthier person, a person that literally does not have chronic disease or has very low risk for chronic disease and low risk for cancer, has extremely numerous species of bacteria in their gut, and they have many each of those species of bacteria. So the more diversity of bacteria you have in your gut indicates your body's ability to withstand infections, because infections actually get into the gut itself, stimulates the gut microbiome, and the gut microbiome talks to the immune system and tells it, hey, there's an invader in this part of the body. Let's put out some cytokines or macrophages or whatever is necessary to kill this. So the more unique and variety of species that you have in the gut, the better communication. It also helps to crowd out, all these species of bacteria help to crowd out other potentially pathogenic bacteria. So you really are, you're just dealing with numbers here, but the numbers make all the difference in the world. And that variety of species and numbers of species has a certain name, and that's called alpha diversity. And there are tests that you can do to determine your alpha diversity. And there is one unique test that was created by Microbiome Labs called Biome FX that is read by an internationally well-known company called Cosmos ID, who is one of the premier companies that actually does whole genome sequencing of microbes, meaning that they look at the entire microbe, not just parts, and estimate what that microbe is. They look at the entire gene structure and identify specific species. And what they are doing is developing a tremendous amount of information from a unique tool test.
Yeah.
And one of those tests, one of those reports is your alpha.
Can't see you yet. Oh, there you are.
Oh, wow. I don't know what's going on. I know it, the internet just blacked out.
Yeah. Yeah. It happens. It happens.
If I had a better method, I would do it. But I guess I was talking about alpha diversity and the microbiome.
About Cosmos ID, and they were their ability to give us a reading that helps.
Yes, so it's a very, very interesting company that has international presence and the ability to do this testing, and they have just a huge database of microbes. So they can identify the alpha diversity extremely well.
Yeah.
And they can place me as an individual patient or client that submits this Biome FX or stool test within a ecosystem of healthy individuals, or microbiomes. So when I did the test in June of last year, my alpha diversity was in the 98th percentile. Wow. That means 98% of all individuals in their database that have a healthy ecosystem, microbiome, are below me in alpha diversity, and only 2% have a better alpha diversity than I do. Wow. So what does that mean? To me, that means that I have the ability to hopefully ward off infections, virus infections, bacterial infections, other types of invaders in my body naturally. That tells me I have a strong immune system. Now, a sidelight to all this is that my cancer, which is multiple myeloma, suggests that I have a malignancy of plasma cells, which are the B cells within the bone marrow, which produce antibodies. And therefore, my immune system should be highly compromised. I should be getting sick anytime I'm exposed to something, and it could be a life-threatening illness. That's not happening, at least from what I am determining. I'm not getting sick, but also this alpha diversity tells me something contrary to what my oncologist would suggest my disease would be creating. So it's a very important part of creating a robust immune system, and that's my fourth biomarker. The other is something that's very, very well researched, and it's bannered about all the time, and that is your vitamin D level in your blood. And it's critical. And now with the COVID issues, many papers have been written identifying that vitamin D is a very important part of a stronger immune system. And a lot of individual, and this is these statistics are just observational, but a lot of people that are seriously infected and compromised with COVID-19 have a very low blood level of vitamin D. Those that have a much higher level recover better. This is the observational data that I'm reading. So if this is the case, vitamin D is very important, but previous articles about vitamin D before COVID definitely support this concept and talk about all the benefits of vitamin D. It's just we have receptor sites on every cell for vitamin D. So understanding vitamin D and at least being able to measure it in your blood is important. And there is a very simple blood test called a 25-hydroxy vitamin D blood test. You get a little blood drawn from your vein, and almost any lab can do the test, and you can identify your nanograms per milliliter of this inactive vitamin D. And the inactive vitamin D is important because it's more stable in the blood than the active. So active vitamin D really fluctuates quite a bit. The inactive, which is the result of this test, is more stable, and it gives you an idea of what your reserve of vitamin D is as your body requires vitamin D.
Yeah.
And from all the research I read today is that our vitamin D level, this 25 hydroxy vitamin D, should be in the neighborhood of 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter.
Yeah.
And it should be higher, closer to the 60 range, if you have risky situations, if you're in a risky category, and certainly if you have cancer, maybe it should be even between 60 and 80. And that is where my levels are, between 60 and 80 nanograms per milliliter. I do take a supplement of vitamin D, vitamin D3 every day. I'm trying to maintain that level. I don't have the ability to get out in the sun and do all kinds of things that would be the ideal way to get vitamin D3, but I am doing what I can. So I think these 5 biomarkers, and there are many other tests that you can do, obviously, but I think these 5 biomarkers have never been put in a little toolkit like I'm doing, identifying how important they are to identify how robust your immune system is, how much risk or how low risk you are in getting other chronic diseases. Basically, how healthy you are. I think it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, no, I think to everybody who's consistently been involved with these Wednesday night things I do, all of this we've, separately we've heard already. Yep. None of it, and we've even experimented with the CGMs,
Yeah.
But the truth is, you're right. No one's pulled it together into one sort of, look, here are the 5 key things to do. I suppose, and it's so exciting. I suppose for a lot of us who'll be watching this on Wednesday night, our country's just gone back into total lockdown.
Right.
Literally 24 hours ago. And so the challenge with vitamin D, for example, to go and get a test, very few people are going to risk themselves to go and do that. So I think what might be helpful here is, you just said you do take a supplement. You said vitamin D3. When we look for vitamin D supplements, there seems to be a wide range. So it might be helpful if you tiptoe back through the 5, but particularly vitamin D, and just share with us what you are actually doing. So how many, what is the actual
doses
you're taking? How much of it are you taking, sort of thing?
Sure. So I do take,
before you, and if you can help us, if you think about the 5, think, okay, we might not be able to get tests, we might not get a meter, a continual glucose monitor, but what we might be able to do is say, well, look, generally, we're all different, of course, but generally, here's what you could do to give yourself a good chance to be in a window that's kind of reasonably healthy. That would be helpful.
Absolutely. So as far as the health of the gum tissue, you need to clean your mouth correctly.
Yeah.
Now, I wrote a paper, and I'm not sure if I sent it to you, Jack, already or not, but it's called 4 Steps to a Healthy Mouth. I will send it to you. It's in a PDF, and it can, or a link to my website, actually, that is a PDF.
Send the link, and then I'll post the link.
Yeah, you can. I was going to say it's available to any and every viewer that you have.
Yeah,
that's perfect. So let me make a note. So the
send the link, and I can easily send that on to everyone.
Yeah, the 4 steps. So you have to take care of your mouth and make sure your mouth is healthy. And I show how to clean it properly and how to use these little TP picks. But if you get bleeding, clean your mouth better and do the other things I'm going to talk to you about in a moment. But certainly when you have an opportunity, get to a dentist and see what they see in your mouth that may be damaging your mouth. As far as your gut microbiome, which is very important to make sure your mouth is healthy, I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment. So that's the first thing as far as a healthy mouth. The second thing, as far as being in ketosis, you just have to be on a low carbohydrate diet. Now, a low carbohydrate diet is not the same as other low carbohydrate diets. There are other things that you could be eating in a low carbohydrate diet that is very unhealthy. So basically I recommend, And I wrote a little mini ebook called The Better Belly Blueprint, which is my concept of a carnivore animal-based diet. And there are lots of websites that talk about carnivore diets today because it's getting more popular. But eating an animal-based diet with only if any, plants that are very low in oxalates, lectins, and phytates could keep you in a healthy state of ketosis the majority of the time. And all the nutrients your body needs will be in the animal-based products if you're eating the muscle meat, the organs, the saturated fat, and the collagenous material. If you're drinking mineral water, which has all the trace minerals that your body needs, or seasoning your meat when you're cooking with Himalayan salt that has around 82 trace minerals in it. And that's from an analysis of the Himalayan salt that I recently read a few months ago. So eating an animal-based diet, and if you're going to include plants, very, very small amount of plants, like no more than 20 or 30% of the volume of a plate of food. And I discussed that in my Better Belly Blueprint. The Better Belly Blueprint is a mini ebook you can download from Amazon. So if you were to do that, you would be able to maintain ketosis without measuring it. But in a very inexpensive way, you can buy urine ketone strips on the internet. Like 100 costs $7 or something. And you can test your ketone levels.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you? The obvious question is, I'm particularly pleased you mentioned oxalates because I'm really suspicious of those guys. But the thing is, what kind of vegetables are you typically eating? Which ones?
So the majority of the vegetables that are low in oxalates and lectins and phytates are really the fruits. So the fruits are good. Apples are good. Mangoes are good. Oranges may be good. Pears may be good. These do not have a number of oxalates or lectins that are damaging to the gut. Some vegetables all have oxalates and lectins. The question is the volume of these vegetables and the ones that have the least. So from what my reading is, and I'm not done the personal research on these plants, but what I'm reading, like romaine lettuces, those romaine lettuces has low oxalates. Some of cabbage and arugula have low oxalates. Yet if you eat a lot of these vegetables, plants, they can create other anti-nutrients in quantity that can disturb the gut. The best thing to do would be to deal with a animal-based diet for the majority of the time. Eat some vegetables. Raw honey is good, by the way. And maybe consume avocados, which are healthy, in addition to some of the fruits. But try to avoid most other plants and no seeds or nuts, because seeds and nuts are extremely high in oxalates and lectins.
Okay. I suppose for some of us who are keen low carbers and keto enthusiasts like myself, we kind of steer away from fruits other than, say, raspberries or blueberries in small amounts. But do you take apples? I mean, are you having an apple a week or something?
Sure. You could have an apple has about 17 grams of carbs. So if you ate an apple, you can still be in ketosis. But you can't eat an apple and a mango and an orange and 2 tablespoons of honey and stay in ketosis. It's just not going to work. So you have to think in terms of, you want to be in ketosis, meaning you have to eat probably no more than 20 grams or so of carbs a day. And if you were to be in that mode where you want to have some carbohydrates, an apple once a day with all rest being animal-based foods would keep you in ketosis, and you'd have that diversity of food if you wanted something a little sweeter. But you could be in an animal-based diet 100% and eat a tablespoon of honey a day or 2.
Yeah.
1 tablespoon of raw honey has 17 grams of carbs also. But interestingly, raw honey, number one, is an animal-based food. It's made by
Yeah.
bees. And
Right.
number two, honey has over 200 biologically active chemicals. It is a medicinal food, actually, and it does quite a bit of healing in the body. There are 2 or 3 PubMed, peer-reviewed, published papers on honey and the benefits with cancer patients, interestingly enough,
Yeah.
because glucose is not good for cancer patients because cancer cells love to eat glucose, among other things. So honey actually has been shown in animal models and some in vitro studies in culture, but not really in humans yet. But honey has been shown to reduce the growth of cancer cells. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So
It's encouraging.
you can eat honey. You can eat honey if you're doing ketosis and you're on a carb day, the day that you're going to eat 100 to 150 grams of carbs that day and throw yourself out of ketosis. You could do it with 2 or 3 tablespoons of honey, maybe 1 apple, maybe a mango, and you would definitely be out of ketosis, but you would not be eating unhealthy food.
Yeah.
The problem is,
what about cauliflowers? I know a lot of people, because of the cauliflower.
Yeah, so cauliflower, the cruciferous vegetables are lower in oxalates than a lot of other vegetables, but they have some other chemicals that when you're starting to eat them in quantity, they can be damaging. Dr. Paul Saladino talks about the cruciferous vegetables as being a no-no type of plant. And I get that, and I understand that. But if you're doing in moderation, certainly less than 20 to 30% of a plate of food, and that's sporadically, and you needed something different, you're not going to create significant problems in your body. If you wanted to be very strict, like the Paleomedicina Clinic in Budapest, Hungary, where they're treating medical patients that have severe chronic disease and cancer, they're on a very strict animal-based diet that they call the Paleolithic ketogenic diet. No supplements, no pharmaceutical medications, and for the most part, no plants. They do add some plants with some of their patients once they're getting out of their acute stages, but for the most part, no plants. All the nutrients, like I said, are going to be in the plant material. I mean, the animal-based food products like the muscle meat, the organs, the collagenous material, the saturated fat, as long as you are food with Himalayans for the minerals and drinking mineral water. One of the things that I used to do, and I thought I was really, it's interesting how smart you get when you know that you're not, and when you realize you're not smart. So I was drinking filtered water, thinking that that was very healthy water. Turns out that filtered water just is so pure, it doesn't have anything. And then if you get filtered water that is has electrolytes, it's just replaced with electrolytes that are artificially created by somebody. So it looks like the healthiest water to drink is real spring and or mineral water, because when the rain comes down and it filters through the ground and filters through the rocks, and it dissolves the natural minerals that our primal ancestors have drunk for a millennia. Those minerals get into the underground water streams and gets into the springs, and that water that we drink that's fresh and wonderful has lots and lots of trace minerals, which our body needs. And the best way to get minerals not only is in the organ meats and bone marrow, but also in the actual mineral water we drink. And that's an important part.
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned the Hungarian Cancer Clinic. At least one of our group that tends to watch this has been involved there, not through cancer, fun enough, but has gone and researched it. You must have had a good look at that yourself. It seems to be the obvious thing to be attracted to someone like yourself. Have you been impressed by what they're doing, their actual results, the protocols? Are you impressed by them?
So actually, after understanding and learning about the carnivore diet and doing my independent research, I came upon the Paleomedicina clinics website and started reading their published material as well as some of their case reports. And that's what put me edge to go onto a carnivore diet, which I started January 1st, 2020.
Yeah.
So I'm basically into carnivore diet for a little more than a year now.
Yeah.
So I am very impressed with their results. I'm very impressed with their honesty and openness as to what they do.
Yeah.
So to answer your question very succinctly, the answer is yes.
Fantastic.
Very impressed.
Could you send a link to that as well, and I'll put that out?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll send you the link to the English site, obviously,
Yeah.
to their blog page. So their blog page incorporates articles they have written, as well as some of the scientific material and case reports they publish in other journals.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we're one of our other, well, two of our other guests are involved in a cancer clinic, alternative clinic in Stuttgart, and I have indirectly been involved in it for years, since it opened and before it opened. But that's based on Joanna Budvig's work, which is, of course, plant-based. But my own journey in my health has been towards the carnivore now, and that's where I'm at. But I suppose everyone has to find their own level and where their trust is. But
I will tell you this, and this is very important, I think, to understand.
Yeah.
Most westernized societies or civilized societies eat processed foods, and they're basically on what we call the standard American diet, or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And it's just a high carbohydrate diet with very poor quality meats and whatever. So any person that's on a diet like that, creating metabolic disease in their body. And because of that, any diversion from that will actually be healthier. So even if you're a vegan, which I don't subscribe to, but if you're a vegan, you're going to be healthier than a person that's on a standard American diet, at least for a long period of time. Yeah. Sadly, a vegan, cannot get certain nutrients because the human body requires animal products. Yeah. Our DNA requires that. We can't change that. Yeah. But the fact is that a vegan could take a variety of supplements to get the nutrients that they cannot get from a vegan diet. And that a vegan will be healthier than a person on a standard American diet. Now, about all of the alternative diets, my understanding, my research suggests we have a DNA code. We have a DNA blueprint that has evolved over the millennia. Certainly 160,000 years of modern Homo sapiens, our DNA has evolved very slowly, but it has evolved. That's where we are today. That is our blueprint. That is our structure that tells us what we need to do and what we can't do. We need to breathe air or we'll die. We need to drink water or we're going to die. We need to take nutrients into our body or we're going to die. Our DNA blueprint is very clear on that. And we don't have any problem with that. But there's another pendulum to the DNA blueprint. And on the other side of it, our DNA basically says, I have not evolved my genetic material to create the enzymes to digest certain types of elements you can put in my body. If you put these elements in my body, they are poisons to my body, and you will die, or you will get very, very sick, and I can't help you. And the sad thing is, we as humans, for whatever reason, ingest these foods for lunch and breakfast and dinner and snacks constantly, and they're irritants to our body, and our body's digestive enzymes never were created to completely eliminate them. No. And that's the problem. Our guts are more designed for animal digestion, animal products, but we are omnivores. We can eat plants, but there are certain elements in plants that are really damaging, but we put them in our body all the time.
Yeah. So if we go back to, and I took you off at a tangent there for a moment, but if we go back to your 5 five markers, for want of a better term, and your way of advising us how to tiptoe through that without necessarily having relatively expensive CGMs or going to get blood.
Sure.
Most people here in America, getting blood tests is kind of part of the thing. In the UK, it's not part of the thing unless there's something wrong with you. You know, they're not just going to say, "Well, come in and we'll give you a blood test." It's just not going to happen. And there isn't easily for a lot of us, some sort of laboratory just around the corner. When I lived in the south of France, they were everywhere. You could walk in and get a blood test, but not so much in this culture. So just to recap a little bit and see if there's anything else. You're going to give us advice about maximizing our health of our mouth by how to clean it properly.
Correct.
Vitamin D dosage, you could maybe come to that in a moment.
Sure.
And obviously the keto type diet, in your case, animal based like mine, mostly. Is there anything else in between there that you might want to add to help people? I mean, one of the things you haven't mentioned, interestingly enough, is you haven't mentioned exercise as one of the five, which is kind of interesting. And the other thing you've not mentioned is although I suspect you're doing it anyway, intermittent fasting. Do you want to say anything about those things?
Sure. So actually in my article, when I talk about these 5 biomarkers, I'm talking about metabolic flexibility.
Yeah.
And that does include intermittent fasting as an element of becoming intermittent or metabolically flexible, as well as maintaining ketosis. Exercise, sleep, stress reduction are all part of my conventional cancer protocols, but they're not the biomarker per se, because if you are doing good exercise, you're going to help your system, but it's how are you measuring it? And this is what I'm recommending, how to measure it by determine if that robust immune system is efficient. So when you are exercising, you're getting more metabolically flexible and you're in states of ketosis, you can measure that. And that's how exercise plays into the overall protocols to be healthy, but not necessarily a measurement tool.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, it does, absolutely. And would you agree with me? Well, there's only 2 of us. We talk to other people, obviously, but I mean, my experience of intermittent fasting is it's a byproduct of going into keto. In other words, I just naturally fell into, intermittently fasting. I didn't have to create a regime. It wasn't like a diet. It just happened naturally. I wasn't hungry, so why would I eat?
What you just said is the critical element. So when you're in ketosis and you're satisfied because your body is literally using its own fat cells for fuel, it's not stimulating hormones to tell you you're hungry, so you're not actively eating.
Yeah.
So my concept is to eat when you're hungry and drink when you're thirsty, and don't say it's lunchtime, I need to have lunch.
Yeah.
If you're not hungry, there's no reason to eat.
Yeah.
And if you're not thirsty, truly thirsty, there's no reason to drink, but you always want to drink when you're thirsty. So you don't want to say, I think I'm thirsty, but maybe it's not convenient for me to drink now, so I will become dehydrated. You can become dehydrated easily. So you definitely need to drink, but you don't have to force water for X number of liters a day. You'll drink quite a bit when you're thirsty, satisfy your thirst, and then drink more when you're thirsty again. And that's the concept that I really abide by.
Fantastic.
And that's why intermittent fasting, like you're saying, is a consequence of being in ketosis. You're in ketosis, you're not hungry. But if you're a carb burner, every time your glucose level goes down and your insulin, goes down, all of a sudden dopamine shoots in your blood and it says, I need to get satisfied. I'm an addict for carbohydrates, so you're going to eat more carbs, and you're constantly feeding that addiction of a carb burner, and therefore you're eating all the time.
Yeah. Fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Al? Because time's running on.
Sure. So you mentioned the vitamin D level. So let me just tell you about vitamin D level, and that is, for the most part, if you're not getting in the sun, from all the research I read, anybody and everybody would probably not have any side effects if they took between 3,000 international units and 5,000 international units of vitamin D3 a day. And that should be in a, not in powder form, but in a liquid form. Sometimes they're in these little caplets or whatever, that not caplets, but gel caps that are combined with extra virgin organic olive oil, something like that. You don't want to have any of the other oils like coconut, like sunflower oil or soybean oil or anything. You want olive oil would be the preferred oil to suspend the vitamin D3. When you're taking vitamin D3, it's very important to understand you have to have a food source for vitamin K2.
Yeah.
If you take vitamin D3 and you're not taking vitamin K2, you will have the potential for the vitamin D3 affect calcium metabolism, and calcium could become part of the soft tissue rather than hard tissue. So it's very important because vitamin D2 helps to direct calcium into its proper places in bone structure rather than soft tissue like the artery vessels. So vitamin K2 is an important element. It doesn't have to be in a supplement as long as you're getting it in a food source. Certain food sources exist. Egg yolk does have vitamin K2, pastured eggs, but you can get a supplement of vitamin K2. Generally, I take 320 micrograms of vitamin K2 a day. There is a supplement that I get from Microbiome Labs. That's just a company that I work with, but there are other supplements of vitamin K2. But you don't want to not have vitamin K2 in your diet in some fashion if you're taking vitamin D3, or you could have negative effects from the vitamin D3. You don't want to do that.
Good stuff. So that 3,000 to 5,000 is something we've heard already, not specifically on, but just something that came up last. Do you know a guy called Ivor Cummings, the Fat Emperor? Do you study his stuff? Do you watch his stuff?
I'm not sure. Okay. Tell me about that.
Well, he certainly interviews a lot of the scientists around what's going on with COVID, and one of his most recent ones was all about vitamin D, which was fantastic. And he again, and those scientists were recommending that 3,000 to 5,000. So that
that was the range. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. Okay, I suppose to move on a little bit, where is your head with COVID? What's your advice?
All right. So from what I understand from some of my friends, when they start talking about this, the internet shuts them down. So I'm not sure exactly how to proceed. Let me just tell you my position. There is a paper. I'll have to send you this. Just a second. I'll make it
controversial. I might get locked down as well.
Yeah. So there was a paper that was published 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was called Deceptology.
Right.
And it talked about the medical research and production of pharmaceutical treatments for cancer and the production of vaccines.
Yeah.
Very controversial, I would tell you. I think the author works at NIH in the United States, but I'm not sure. I think she does. And this article talked about the history going back to the Rockefeller Foundation and its ability to literally direct how medical research and pharmaceuticals evolved as to where they are today.
Yeah.
And of course, they believe that cancer is being treated today improperly because they're only the medical people, conventional medical people, are only treating a genetic disease when it actually is a metabolic and a mitochondrial disease, and all of that is related to its ability to fight cancer normally, because everybody has cancer cells every day of the week, and our body does several things to kill off cancer cells naturally. When it doesn't do that, those cells metastasize, they grow and metastasize, they shoot all over the place. So that paper talks about how the development of cancer treatment today is misplaced and not effective. And she makes suggestions as to why, and that is we're not allowing our immune system to become robust, basically, like I've talked about. And they talk about vaccines in a very negative way because it is a unnatural type of process to create immunity. And one of the interesting things, and I would just put this out there, for the most part, when we have a virus coming into our body, it comes into our body by way of mucosal tissue. It gets into our eyes, our nose, our ears, maybe our mouth, our mucosal tissue gets it to that tissue. It registers with actually the gut microbiome that identifies an invader, even if it's coming from the eyes. The microbiome communicates constantly among itself all over the body. We have 38 trillion microbes and only 30 trillion human cells. So lots and lots of microbes. They talk among themselves. They signal among themselves. And 80 or 70 to 80% of our immune system is lining the gut tubes, the large and small intestines. And those immune cells then talk back and forth once the microbes say there's an invader here, and this is instantaneous, and then puts out their cytokines, macrophages, whatever they have to do to start affecting a proper innate and adaptive response. All of that comes through the mucous tissue, the mucosal tissue. When we get a vaccine injection, it goes into our muscle. That's not a normal route for a virus to take. So the question I have, and I can't prove this, but the question I have is, does it confuse the immune system because it doesn't get into the mucosal tissues, it doesn't get into the gut, doesn't talk to the gut microbiome directly, and that's the normal process. Of course, the other concern that I have is that what else is in the vaccine? Because we know that there are irritants, chemical irritants that create problems over time. You may not have an immediate response. It may take decades as it accumulates. So are these sometimes adjuvants, preservatives, antimicrobials that are inside these vaccines harmful for the body? I don't know. It's just a question. And this article, Deceptology, goes into it. I'll send you the article and you can present that to your viewers.
Well,
my question is...
Send me a link again. Links work very well with what I do. But the thing I'd say is, the obvious question is, in the understanding of this thing that we're given on our media in the UK and Ireland, you're in the age group and you are a type of person who the government here and the medical people here would want to get the injection as a kind of priority. The obvious question, if you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer it for obvious reasons, because we don't know who's listening in, but would you be inclined to take it, or would you?
All right, I'm going to answer it in an interesting way. So I would say 4 years or so ago, I can't remember, 4 or 5 years ago, there was a flu vaccine for seniors that was a double dose type of vaccine, high potency type of flu vaccine. And I usually did not get the flu shot, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, one interesting thing, and this is just an observation. Before COVID, and I went to my cancer clinics looking at my, I was there every month with my oncologist. My oncologist and his personal assistant, physician's assistant, came into the room. They had masks on. They were sneezing. Their eyes were red. They looked miserable. They sounded miserable. They told me they had the flu. And they said that half the hospital had the flu. Yet every person that's employed at the hospital must take the flu shot. So half the hospital has the flu. 100% of these people took the flu shot. What's wrong with that picture? Number one. Number two, 4 or 5 years ago, I took a flu shot. I normally don't take, but I just took it. It was that double dose. And this is very interesting. 1 week later, I was sitting at my dining room table with my wife having dinner, and something happened. Couldn't tell you exactly what happened, but when I was looking at the plate of my food, looking at what I was eating, I couldn't remember the names of the foods on my plate.
Wow.
And I told my wife, I was concerned. I had no problem with speech or motor movement. I turned to my wife and I said, something is happening. What is the name of this food? And I pointed to something. Maybe it was spinach or something. Let's say it was spinach. In those days, I wasn't on carnivore diet. And I pointed, and she said, and she was concerned, and she said, spinach. Okay, spinach. And what is this? And she told me what it is. And she said to me in a very calm way, she said, do you think you're having a stroke?
Yeah.
And I said, I feel fine. I just can't remember the words of these foods that I know I should know.
Yeah.
And I said, just give me 5 minutes just to sit and be calm. We took my blood pressure. It was normal.
Yeah.
And then within 5 minutes, everything was fine. And this has never, ever happened to me before. And all I could think was, I just took this flu shot 1 week before. Now I'm doing research because I'm geeky, and there are a lot of people reporting all kinds of side effects and symptoms from flu shots.
Yeah.
Guillain-Barré, I mean, all kinds of situations that could be very serious.
Yeah.
And you can't sue a pharmaceutical vaccine company, but there is a government website that is run by the CDC that I could actually go to report the incident. I called my physician.
Yeah.
He told me to report it.
Yeah.
I went to the CDC, and there is a rigmarole to get into reporting this.
Yeah.
And it was so complicated and so unfriendly for a user. And I couldn't save the information I was putting. I want to know anything and everything in detail, that I just quit, and I couldn't report it.
Yeah.
And that disturbed me because I couldn't let anybody really know from a government standpoint that I think I'm just having action. Are other people having reactions like this? So when I've told my physician since then and my oncologist that I've had these problems, he actually recommended me not to take the flu shot, and is not sure if I should take the COVID, because COVID vaccine is totally different than a flu shot. Yeah. It's an mRNA a type of vaccine that's never been tested before in humans. And the question is, will I have or will I not have a reaction? And I don't know. And sometimes if you have a vaccine and you have a compromised immune system, you may not get the benefit because your immune system is compromised. Yeah. Again, the idea is that it's going to help make antibodies. And if my plasma cells are malignant, which are the cells that make the antibodies, will it not have effect and maybe be an untoward effect? No one knows because it's not been done yet. No. So the question is, I'm not sure right now. I'll let you know. It's not available to me yet anyhow, but I am in, like you said, a high risk group. And when it comes available, my oncologist said I wouldn't be even offered it for until maybe February. So I don't know. I am concerned. I am concerned because of my previous reaction and the fact that I do have a malignancy of plasma cells.
Yeah. I mean, I don't take the flu jab.
But I will interrupt you and tell you this is one reason why supporting a robust immune system means to me, because if I'm not doing something like a flu shot, which I have questions about, I know my immune system theoretically is very compromised. I need to do everything I can do within reason to support my immune system. That's why these 5 things make total sense to me.
Absolutely.
Total sense.
Absolutely. And yeah, in my own situation is, I don't take the flu jab. I was working in Zambia a few years back. I took the yellow fever thing because you couldn't go otherwise. But otherwise I wouldn't have taken that. And the thing that's concerning me is I would like to travel when we ever get round to traveling again, if we do, to go and see my grandson in Australia, who I've not met yet. But yeah, I might have to take an injection. So it's going to be very interesting as it evolves. My sort of interesting term, gut reaction to it is at the moment is to let others get on with it and see what happens down the line. But anyway, we better watch what we're saying here. We could get into trouble.
I think the history is that when drugs are put on the market, no matter how well they're tested, when they're really into the general population, a lot of research now accumulates data. And then, a lot of are on the market are pulled because of untoward results that never were identified in the clinical. So this is a possibility. I'm obviously very interested in understanding what it is doing to the immune system and how it's affecting people that have never been tested with it before. And all that data is going to accumulate. And then again, of course, I just hear recently that the mutation in Africa could be a mutation that may be not allowing the vaccine to be effective. That I just heard on the news today. So I don't know. No one knows. It's all new.
No, we get mixed messages over here. Even today, some doctors are beginning to complain because not only the doctors, but the high sort of risk groups who've already been given the first injection of the Pfizer one are due another one 21 days on, and they've decided not to give it to them. And so,
and all the research
all about? It doesn't make
based
sense.
on 2.
Yeah. So anyway, we better not go there because I want to be able to interview you again.
And I'd love to be here and talk with you again because it's always fun.
Yeah. Well, listen, Al, you've been a star.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving us your time again. And for us, it's a wonderful way to begin the new year, just to have you back again.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's lovely talking with you. We've had conversations about almost everything in the past, almost everything. I will send you links to everything that I just described. And if there's anything else you need from me, just email me and I'll get it to you.
Good man. Cheers. Thanks again.
Oh, wonderful day and a happy new year.
Yes. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.